Hi class, Professor Bennett. We are moving into type and typography. So with the last lesson, we discussed all about the printed word and how did the Gutenberg printing press and the evolution of visual communication from pictographs and cave paintings all the way to the phonetic language. How did that affect the way that we see the world. And so we're going to spend a week just kind of honing in on type. We've talked about the meaning of the words, but how do those words actually look, right? It's not always what you say, but sometimes it's how you say it. And that's never been more true with typography. Typography is almost invisible. You might not even notice that it exists sometimes, but the difference between a font that's written like this and a font that's written like this is very, very different in your perception, right? So this week we are going to be moving through a couple of readings. And then you will have to design your own business card, and you will have to justify your selection of the type of font and typeface that you use, and why do you want to use that to represent yourself and your position. So again, you're going to have to design it and justify why you're using that type to communicate the perception that you would like about yourself. And you're going to have to use some terms that you will get from the readings and from the module pages this week. Just a little housekeeping that there is no quiz this week, but next week in the next lesson you will have a 20-point assignment. So just something to keep in mind, that there is not a quiz with this module, but you will have to take some of the terms and use them in the discussion board properly. So one thing that's really cool, I think, about the reading that I'm giving you guys this week is that it's from one of the few pop cultural books that are about type. So as you can see, most of these books that are about typography are really like for the designer. They're actually really, really specific, all about design and the shape of letters. This is a really great field guide to typography. It's all about how you can spot typefaces in the urban landscape. So there are a lot of it for designers, for people who are creating type and designing every day. But since this is not a design production class, this isn't an art class, we're just analyzing art and visual communication, it's been really hard for me to find the right book and the right chapter to give to you guys so that you can get some history and some lessons and some stories behind it. Because as we've been talking about, every medium shapes the humans that observe it in some way. The medium is the message, right? So if we think of type and text and the design of type, the way that type looks as another medium, as another way to communicate not just the content, but also the visual communication of the message. What are those colors and forms communicating to you beyond just what the type actually says? So I found a really great book. I love it. It's called Just My Type, and it's got a ton of chapters. If you ever want to buy the book, it's a great read. Individual chapters that are all about different fonts and different typefaces and kind of how they came to be and how they've come to be used and how they've come to be sense selected and perceived. So what you have here really is just the introduction and the second chapter, which talks about Gutenberg and the printing press and how did typography evolve from serif fonts in the Gutenberg days, and how did they evolve out into the really modern kind of Helvetica typefaces, the sans serif fonts that we see most commonly today. If you look at really any street sign, most signs that are out in the public space, if they want to be read quickly and efficiently, they're usually going to be at a sans serif typeface. So this is a really short chapter, but it's I think it's super fun to read. And it's really written for the everyman. It's not even academic. It's really written for people who just want to know more about type. And here you have the first typeface, the first font, which was created by Gutenberg, because he created the first instance of movable type. And so here there are some module pages that I've taken. A lot of them are actually scans from this book, Why Fonts Matter, by Sarah Hindeman, and her work is really great. She is a font designer as well, but she really understands the way that it can affect our senses, that the way that we read something, how we can almost taste it sometimes, or we can hear it. And it's all based on how the type is written in the first place. And so a lot of this goes back to visual cues, which we learned earlier in this course about the shape of words, right? The lines and whether it's curved or a straight line, is the shape of the word. Is it just a rectangle, or does it have some nuance to it? And so there's a couple of videos here, and then there's some terms and some examples of how you can see the differences between different typefaces. So you should be able to identify the difference between them so that you can be better about choosing which one that you want to use to represent you in your business card. And so here's how perception, so we have how our fonts sensed, right, through visual cues, and how our fonts perceived through our own memories and our own experiences. So again, we're talking about this distinction between what we sense and what we eventually perceive. And so you have to include and consider both of those before you come up with your own business card. And so I would like to remind you that the deadlines are now on Friday for these, and you'll have to make your first post by then. And please just think about an aspirational job that you might want to do. Even if it's not something you currently have, you know, what are you in school for, and what would you like to do? What's sort of the dream job, and how would you visually represent yourself, your personality, or your ability to do that job properly? So as long as you justify it and you use the terms that we learned about in this module, you're going to do fine. All right, enjoy, and I hope to see you in the discussion boards. Can't wait to see your business cards.